Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going all the way to Eastern Europe, and we're going to be looking at the relationship between Ukraine and Canada. And we're going to be focusing on Zelensky's conversation with Justin Trudeau.
Right.
This is important because, Canada has been supporting Ukraine for a long time now.
They really have been a key ally.
Yeah, they've been super supportive. So we're going to look at, what they talked about, what they're doing.
Okay, sounds good.
And we're also going to be looking at kind of like the broader picture of, international support for Ukraine.
Yeah, how this fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was reading about Zelensky's call with Trudeau.
Yeah.
And he seemed really, grateful.
Oh, absolutely. He expressed a lot of thanks.
Yeah, he did.
Canada's been there since day one, with consistent support.
Yeah. And, he mentioned, the NASAMS.
Oh, yeah, the air defense system.
I was like, what are those, So I did a little research.
Well, they're pretty important for Ukraine's defense. It stands for Norwegian Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they can take on, fighter jets,
Oh, wow.
cruise missiles, even those Iranian drones that Russia's been using.
Huh.
They're really effective against a lot of different threats.
So it's like Canada's really stepping up to, protect Ukrainian skies.
Exactly. It shows a serious commitment to their defense.
Yeah, that's really cool. So another thing that Zelensky talked about was sanctions against Russia. And this time they were talking about strengthening them and, going after their propaganda networks.
Yeah, it's really important to limit the spread of misinformation, especially in a conflict like this.
Right, and then he mentioned something about a shadow fleet.
Yeah.
What is a shadow fleet?
It sounds a bit like a spy movie.
It does.
But it's basically a bunch of ships, often older tankers, that are used to transport Russian oil and other goods.
Oh, okay.
Under the radar, to avoid those international sanctions.
So you're trying to, sneak around.
Yeah, basically. By targeting the shadow fleet, though, countries like Canada can really hurt Russia's economy.
Yeah.
And that makes it harder for them to pay for the war.
So it's kind of like a two-pronged approach.
Exactly.
Stopping the flow of goods and also the flow of information.
Precisely.
That's really interesting.
It's all about controlling the narrative, you see.
Yeah.
Making sure people understand what's really happening.
Right. Now, Zelensky also had an interesting proposition. He wants to increase funding for Ukrainian weapons production.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and even explore, localized manufacturing.
So they can make their own weapons.
Exactly. I think this could be huge.
I think so, too.
It could make them less reliant on other countries for weapons.
Yeah. Self-reliance is key in a situation like this.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to just start making complex weapons.
Yeah.
You need investment. You need expertise and skilled workers. It's a big undertaking.
Right, and that's where Canada's financial aid comes in.
Oh, right.
The Canadian Parliament just approved a huge package.
How much are we talking?
764 million Canadian dollars.
Wow. That's significant.
Yeah. I mean, think about what they could do with that money. They could provide humanitarian aid, support refugees, but they could also invest in that localized weapons production.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're thinking long term, but there's also this thing about banned firearms.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
Canada might transfer them to Ukraine, 324 types of firearms that are prohibited in Canada. It's kind of controversial.
Yeah, I can see why.
Some people say it's necessary to give Ukraine the support they need. But others are worried about what might happen to those weapons after the conflict is over.
Right, they could end up in the wrong hands.
Exactly. It's a tough call.
It really is.
Now, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. It's about an agreement on the protection of classified information.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it might seem like a small detail, but I think it's pretty important.
I agree. It shows a lot of trust. Sharing classified information is a big deal.
Yeah.
You have to really trust your partner.
So it kind of solidifies that bond between Canada and Ukraine.
Absolutely. It strengthens their cooperation.
So we've got financial aid, military support, intelligence sharing, and maybe even collaboration on weapons production. All this happening while Canada's taking over the G7 presidency.
That's right.
That's got to have an impact on things. Right?
Oh, definitely. It gives them a bigger platform to rally support for Ukraine, coordinate sanctions, maybe even shape the global response to the conflict.
It's like Canada stepping into a leadership role.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Well, that's it for our deep dive today. But as always, the conversation doesn't end here.
That's right. There's always more to think about. So I'll leave you with this question. How will this relationship between Canada and Ukraine and Canada's G7 presidency affect the future of the conflict? What new developments might we see?
That's a good question. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ukraine-Canada relations. We'll see you next time.